make a map of the techniques, like a web of connection that they can see visually. So I thought that's very concrete.
Eddie Bravo's done some stuff like that in his.
Oh yeah.
Probably a lot of guys do. I'm imagining now because they can chain together.
It works really well for submission grappling and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I think.
I think so too, yeah.
Especially on the offensive side, you can. I'm trying to find where you are again. Oh, there you are. You can. I'm looking from the window. You can you can create a system where, if you're on the attacking side of things in grappling, you can create a system where you pose dilemmas to your opponent, where they don't really have any good options.
Right.
They have to. Yeah. They have to choose between bad things, and then you have an answer. You have another dilemma at the end of both dilemmas, and so you can create these charts.
Mm-hmm.
It's harder to do that where their possibilities are much more open and endless. Like, it's harder to do that in a striking context. It's possible, but it's not as easy because it's so fluid.
It's fast.
Very fast. Yeah.
Right.
And it's also a little bit harder to do it in a defensive way. Like, it's harder to make flowcharts defensively, but it's also doable to some extent. And
right. When I've got some questions brewing about that, but I don't know what they are yet. It's something like, say if I'm training grappling, I feel like I have not found my way out of I tend to be on the defensive a lot, which is to say, like, the tables have been flipped and I'm the one on the shit end of the stick. Now, if I go with guys who aren't as good as me, obviously, I can toy with them. You know, I can flip them over. I can establish a dominant position, but then it's like I feel like there's a big missing link between my positioning and then starting to actually threaten them with things. And I wonder how I could bridge that gap. I mean, okay, obvious, like, learn the techniques, do them, train them, get them good, like get from this position. Maybe, okay, so now as I'm talking about it, maybe it's like trying to map out, okay, from this position of dominance, it has to be an attack, right? I have to be in a position of dominance and then decide to attack something, like posing the dilemma, and then I see a possibility for a higher level of skill where I do something and then the person puts themselves into a dilemma. That's even better. But that would be posing a dilemma that they don't really realize is a dilemma. Like, I get in a position, I know they want to get out of it, and then so as they're getting out, I just flow that right into the next thing, which gets them. And I feel like I've got this big, foggy mess of non-knowledge.
Yeah.
A not knowing, if you will.
Yeah, you know that there's a lot of stuff that you don't know that you don't know, but you don't know what it is.
Like that, I'm like, because I in boxing, I feel like I know that stuff. I can do things. I'm like, I got it in a certain way that other people don't. But grappling, not so much.
Yeah.
Whereas I think your skills are getting more in that direction.
Yeah, it's weird. I'm still not practicing all that much every week.
Right.
But when I'm working with someone of similar athletic ability, and then the skill or lack thereof really shows up. So I've definitely found that if I'm working with somebody who's a lot more athletic than me, it makes a big difference. Like,
yeah,
because
you can do stuff to counteract their athleticism.
Not if they have decent skill. Like I think that with grappling, I think something we miss in Cheng Shin training
Mm.
is the act of physical resistance. It's just not
Yeah.
it's not in the training very much, and the degree of difficulty that poses on somebody is substantial.
Yeah.
Like, it is a major element of combat. It's not a minor one.
Yeah.
Uh,
It seems
ath-
to be the case.
athleticism matters a lot, and when I say athleticism, I mean primarily strength and explosiveness, but also speed, durability, your ability to just take damage.
Hmm.
Like, if you're boxing the Terminator, he could suck, but he's still gonna win,
Yeah.
right? uh, like stuff like that. It's really important, and so sometimes I roll with people who are pretty competitive, and they're going to a lot of tournaments, and not all of them, but a lot of them, they can stomp me with their athleticism, and they rely on their athleticism,
Hmm.
and it's a little dispiriting sometimes. It's like, you know, it's like these tanks, these guys that are like in their 20s, and they're just ripped, and um, they're just monsters, and it's just hard. And their techniques may be good as well, right?
Yeah. Dangerous combination.
But I don't think that it's total. It's not like athleticism is the only thing that matters. That's not true either. Because if that was true, then who cares? Like, just go to the gym and just lift weights and run and whatever, right? That would be the way to be the best. So that's not true either. But in Chengshin, we deliberately in most of the practice of Chengshin, a good deal of athleticism is deliberately taken out of the training so that people can just develop skill,
Yeah.
and it works until people start bringing it back in, and then it's like, oh shit, I have to deal with
Hmm.
that.
Yeah. There's a
And
different subset of
well,
understanding has to occur. Like,
one thing
here's a resist. Go ahead. We can say.
well one thing I've gotten a little bit of is just like in the throwing, like I deliberately try, because almost everybody resists. Like in real life, people resist it when you try to throw them. They don't
Hmm.
yield,
Hmm.
they resist, and so you have to like feel the resistance and count on it, and then immediately reverse it. It's like
Yeah.
you're going da 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 da, like you're always feeling for which way are they pushing. They're always bracing up one way or another, and
Hmm.
so you're always looking for the and because they're always bracing up one way or another, there's always another angle at which they're weak.
Yeah.
It cannot be, and so you're just always looking for those other directions. At least that's how I'm doing it.
Hmm.
Oh,
There's that thing about like posing dilemmas. I think again, like it's like a little thing. It's not the pull through. You don't do the pull through for the pull through. You're doing it to get somewhere else.
yeah.
So now I'm starting to see a possibility of mapping things out where, like, I did some judo for a while,
Mm,
and it's like getting the big throw is damn near impossible, but you can set something up. And I
yeah.
started to realize, oh, wait a minute, I can't just go for a big throw. I have to find these little things that start to get somebody off balance, and then that's why in my mind it becomes a chain of events. It's not a one event, it's a chain, like tit 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 bam,
Yeah.
rather than
Yeah.
gaboom. Some guys are really good and they'll nail a big throw, but the guy that I remembering one guy who's really good at the shoulder throw deal, like, I don't know the name of it, whatever. He would set it up because he would jerk the gi down. It would cause an off balance and
Hmm.
poof,
Yeah.
so that's still setting it up just much faster. But again,
Yeah.
he's posing a dilemma of boom, using my reactivity, I react a certain way and he can slip in, he knows it, he can feel it, and boom.
Yeah.
See, so the dilemma, the chain of events, it's like, I think the rule or principle here is process. See, like in physical space, processes occur. And if the process goes far enough, then you get what we call the result and Ralston would be on it, like the result is simply the end. It's the part of the process we say we're doing it for, but the process doesn't stop. And people tend to think of processes too chunky. Like he would get on me for chunky thinking. And it's like, I want to hit them, and most people think of a strike as that impact part. It's not. It's the entire, like, move, get them to move, they're moving, I move with them, and boom. And then it keeps going. But, like, the punch is the entire thing, and it's my whole body. And then depending on how I pay attention, most people pay attention to the hit part, and they forget the body, for example. So I was just thinking about, processes of throwing, just based on what you were saying before, where it's like you pose a problem and the throw, there isn't like a punch or there isn't a throw, it's just a process. There's no such thing as a throw.
Yeah,
It's
a
just
useful...
two bodies. Yeah, like we get, like if two bodies create this certain shape and do this certain motion, we call that a, whatever, an Imanari roll or something like that, or a pull through to an ankle pick. It's like boom, boom. But what's happening is not the language that we use to talk about it. It's the actual bodies in certain shapes in physical space. So then it would be like mapping out the shapes that work with the other shapes. And like which ones work.
Yeah.
And what processes would you need to create? Yeah. I was just trying to think of like a way of questioning or getting at it too.
Well, I think you're onto something. It's super important, and I know you have personal experience with that, a lot of personal experience with that, especially with boxing, and also with Tuisha.
Yeah.
I think in the boxing, Qingshin boxing is more effective for fighting right now than Qingshin Tuisha.
For sure.
Because Qingshin boxing is, you can't really fake hitting, and like boxers aren't going to relate much differently than Qingshin boxers. Like good boxers box very similarly to good Qingshin boxers. It's not there are people who box, it's not that different. It's like boxing is pretty...
It's boxing. Yeah,
boxing,
you can't, right. You can't, like, striking is striking. It has to, if you're going to use your fists to do it, you can't really do too much variation there.
And I think you could do very easily the same thing for Qingshin Tuishao. All you do is just start training with resistance, and that just handles that. Like just allow people to start resisting like they would any other time.
We do have that.
Yeah.
We call it Game Z.
Okay. Yeah, but we hardly ever play it.
We don't play it. Yeah, because it's true. And I guess I can see why, because people's ability to yield goes the fuck out the window.
Yeah.
So there has to be maybe like a game ZB or something like that, where one person can resist, but the other person has to yield.
It's important to have intermediate steps. It's important to have intermediate steps. I completely forgot what I was going to say. Okay, check this out. All right. So I've been teaching English for a while.
Yeah.
And so we have this thing that's really interesting in English and in other languages too, but you really see it a lot in English. You see words that are both verbs and nouns, like plan and planning, right? Do you have a plan, or do you plan?
Right. Got it.
You have a throw, and then you have throwing. So you have like a chunk of something. It's like as if an object, and then you have the action of the object. Yeah. And in English, we have this thing called the continuous tense. We say I am going instead of I go. I am drinking instead of I drink. If I say I'm drinking wine, that's very different than if I say I drink wine.
Yes.
If I say I drink wine, it's a fact. If I say I'm drinking wine, that's probably saying that I'm doing it right now.
Yeah.
right? There's this quality of continuous movement or unfolding process or action.
Yeah.
Okay, that is not popular in most languages.
Okay.
Other languages, many of them don't have that at all.
They would say like
And
I drink.
yep, and that is the same as they would use that interchangeably with I drink on occasion and I am drinking right now.
Right.
It's just I drink.
I
I
drink.
drink right now or I drink on occasion. And you have to
Yeah.
say right now or on occasion. But you don't have that sense of process.
Okay.
So if you take a technique, you can say like I am throwing a punch. This is a punch. But you can also refer to it as punching, and it's the whole thing, like you were saying, and everything that's involved is oriented towards this goal,
You right?
right? There's an unfolding nature to it. Okay. And what I'm suggesting is that it's all the same reality.
Okay.
The activity is occurring as it does. But
Yeah.
notice, even for me to say that, I have to use the English continuous tense. The activity is occurring as it does.
Yeah.
But you can switch. So you can look at something from a technical, blocked out perspective, and that can be very useful because you're describing something that's rote and mechanical, which is necessary for communication.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But you can also switch into a more continuous, as if like a continuous verb of unfolding process around the same object, like a punch.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so
Tracking.
like it doesn't have to be one or the other. You don't have to say, all right, we're just going to do, process and principle. No, you can also have
Why
chunky
are you saying this?
techniques because I think that what you were saying, either the way you're conceiving it or the way that people might hear you, is that you're kind of suggesting that one is better than the other, or that
Oh.
it's one or the other.
No, yeah, I wasn't doing that at all. But but you're speaking to that. Got it. That's why you're saying this.
Yeah, and so I
Okay.
think it's useful to be able to understand that a technique can be a very like specific thing that's in relationship to a very very specific thing. Like he does X, I do Y, and it's quite specific as to
Right.
what that could be. He reaches out with his right arm. I'm gonna do a pull through. What is a
Yeah.
pull through? It's defined by this. Okay.
Yeah.
Whereas you can also say like, now I am complimenting, right?
Yeah.
Right. I am in the world of complimenting right now, and that's going deep into every moment is in alignment with this principle, and I am embodying the principle, right?
Right. Right. Right.
and
Right.
and and I'm engaged fully in this thing that we call pull through. The outcome is a pull through, but the whole process, the activity, is much richer and fuller and more alive and more real and more present, et cetera,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it's just useful to be able to recognize that there's actually not a conflict there. Those aren't two different things. Those are two different perspectives, two different ways of holding something.
Yeah. Yeah. And ways of looking. Yeah. To yeah. Yeah. Like ways of looking at considering what's there, and then as you're talking, yeah, and they're not counter to each other. I just simply I try to, I think maybe one of, well, I don't know, my main reason for speaking like that is to open people's minds up so that they get that like what's actually happening is not the punch, it's that process.
Mm-hmm.
And then within that process, the place where the skill happens is in making finer and finer distinctions within that process, of
Yep.
which we would then, like a good teacher, I'm thinking, say, maybe like John Danaher, he gets real nerdy about these technical details. But then if somebody, like I say to my students, you have to take the sounds that come out of my mouth, make meaning out of the sounds, and then to make those sounds into a feeling, understanding in your body. So it has to cross from this barrier of sound and become a feeling.
Mm.
Otherwise, it's just concepts. And so then we might say, get really technical about a punch and be like, look, in this punch, I want you to move your hips and your shoulders and your elbow together, same time, reach out, and when you impact, if it's an effortless punch, have the force come in through your fist, feel a connection between your fist and the floor, and then make that connection really tight, as in like extremely well aligned. I'd like say all these things, but then all of those things, and they might make a difference. Or like when I learn from some grapplers and they tell me, no, you slide your shin bone across the back of their neck and lock your other leg over closer. And like that extra 2 inches makes a huge difference. And so then that is like using the language to get extremely technical, which is very, very valuable for learning. And then, the learning has to bridge from the spoken word into a domain that is non-languaged, which is the feelings. You see, so I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah. I'd be really interested to see, like, so.
Oh, last thing
Yeah.
when I talk in the ways about there's no such thing as a punch, I think that helps lead people to an understanding of what's going on. Because if people think of a punch and whatever they have as a punch and where they're focused in their mind gets locked into that, their body will follow suit. The punch is like, this is a punch, that's it. And so I go, no, that's not what a punch is. Stop thinking that way, because then they can open up to perhaps a new way or really understand that the punch isn't what they thought it was, so then they can relate to it totally differently.
So here's an exercise. We can do it right now. All right. So I want you to describe to me how to do the perfect punch or a perfect punch, right? And don't use the word punch at all. Don't use the word strike. Don't use any word that could be, another way of saying punch.
The perfect punch?
Yeah, describe to me how to do the perfect punch, and do not use the word punch or strike or anything like that.
The perfect way to impact somebody's body.
Okay.
Well, I mean, but then if I'm using the word impact, does that denote?
No, impact could be a lot of things.
Okay.
But okay, impact, yeah.
Well, all right, yeah. So the perfect way to do that is to maneuver your body in such a way so that you affect what they see as your body.
Let me ask you a question before you continue.
Yeah.
What do you mean by impact? Do you mean like they get turned on sexually? Do you mean
there's a collision of bodies?
Collision of bodies.
Yeah.
And what is the result of that collision on one body?
Damage to the other body, but not
structural
yours.
damage?
Yeah.
Not yours.
Yeah,
Okay.
Their body gets hurt, or it stops, or it falls down.
Okay.
Or something in it breaks so that they do not continue to attack.
Okay, so the purpose is to break something in their body or make it to fall down so that they do not continue to attack.
Right, it's to inflict damage, or if we're fighting, maybe I am trying to distract them while I get ready for something else to then do it again better. Depending.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies it for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so then it would be a perfect alignment of two bodies in space where I am reaching out, typically with an arm, to touch them. And when I touch them, the body lines up in such a way that there is a connection between my fist and the ground, and the whole thing my whole body is lined up so that the force, that there is a sudden shock. There is a sudden acceleration of my
Ooh.
knuckles, very sudden acceleration, if you will. It's very fast.
Yeah, yeah.
Acceleration of typically my knuckles, and again, lined up a certain way. That's everything very straight. And suddenly moving force into their body. But really
Okay.
sudden.
Yeah.
With a perfect alignment, and then also their body is shaped in such a way that it is perfect for me to inflict maximum damage with minimum effort.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I like it. How was that? What was that like to try to do?
That was an
Try to explain.
interesting challenge. What were you thinking behind the scenes with that?
Yeah, it
What
was
were you
it was
trying
in,
to create?
I'm trying to create the possibility of a simple way to start communicating to people the process that you want them to engage in around a certain technique where they think a punch is a punch and they've got this idea of what a punch
Oh,
is.
like a way of talking that. What do
Yeah,
you mean?
and one,
Go ahead.
so like for example, so like I could say like, all right, so we're learning how to fight, right? Um, One way, so fighting is uh, a conflict of interest between two beings, two organic beings. In this case, we're talking about humans, and the conflict of interest is one party wants to damage the other party's body, and the reverse. So we've got a
Yeah.
zero-sum game, conflict of interest. Okay, so one way to damage the other body, there are multiple ways you can do this, but one way to damage another body is through velocity, impact, velocity, impact at velocity.
Yeah.
Impact with enough velocity and enough mass behind it will damage the other body.
Yeah.
And so what you want to do, if you're going down this route to destroy another body,
Collisions, having the bodies
collision,
collide with each other, perhaps.
you want to have the bodies collide with each other, but you want to have the bodies collide with each other in such a way that one body is damaged and not the other.
Yeah.
So it's important to pick your targets. So for instance, if I use this part of my body right here, and it's connecting or colliding with this part of another body right here.
So now we're starting to see locations.
Yeah.
So like,
that's going to be very different than if this part of my body right here collides with this part of the other body right here. That's going to be a very, very different result.
Different outcome. Okay.
A very different outcome.
Yeah.
Right. So let's look at, just for example, let's look at this part of my body aligning right here. Now, I said mass moving at velocity.
Yeah.
So my body has a certain amount of mass. The more of my mass, my body's mass, I can get to align with this point and connect with this point, the better.
Yeah.
Because it is impact is going to be a function of mass, right? Anyway, I could go on, but maybe like it's not necessary to do this. You could just say throw a punch. But if you wanted to get somebody out of their habitual way of thinking,
speak a different way,
take the fucking vocabulary out.
Yeah,
Don't even mention
language.
the word punch or throw.
Yeah, because I was watching as you did that and watching what was created in my experience. I was like, oh yeah, and like you would start to say, so like when you said impact and you did the motion of hitting, I was like, nope, that's too much, too much. Nope, they're gonna go right to punch with that.
Yeah.
You see, so it's like no. We're actually just gonna touch this part of the body. So like what? You see, like we need impact, right? You go punch, but no. But what happens when this part of the body touches this part of the body?
Yeah.
What happens when those two touch?
Right.
It's like, oh, wait a minute.
At speed.
That adds speed, but really fast. And
Yeah.
the more,
and with the whole body lined up behind it,
Right.
so that it's not just like
And
a
so how
floppy
do we
thing.
get the whole thing to work rather
Yeah,
than
so you get people to start considering things from a different perspective, and you can think about that in your for like everything. I think about one thing that's been helpful, and I don't think it's the only way to do this, not by a long shot, but it's really helpful in grappling. As I started thinking about different aspects of grappling, is I just have like objectives. So like
mm,
instead of thinking about like here's a guard pass and here's a guard pass and here's another guard pass, I just think about like, okay, what is a guard pass? Take out the word guard pass. Take out the word guard. Take out
mm-hmm.
the word pass. Right. Well, maybe not pass. We'll take out the word guard. Um, what I want to get with a guard pass is
Like your hips past their knees or something like that.
I want to get the majority of my body, as much of my body, past their knees and up into their hip space, up between their arm space, and I want to get their back on the mat.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like that's the objective. It's like get the back on the mat and get as much of my body up past their hips. And then what's in the way? Well, like their feet, their knees, and their hands keep getting in the way. So like
Yeah.
there are these objects that keep getting in the way of my body. So then how can I maneuver my body? What are the actual ways? Well, there's over, there's under, there's to the right, to the left, there's
Mm-hmm.
in between, there's moving their body and there's moving my body. And then like how can I start creating combinations and like reactions and overreactions that
Mm-hmm.
allow me to get into those positions? Right? And it's actually like not that, from that perspective, there's only so many directions. There's only so many objects that can get in the way, right? And then like what are my advantages? If I'm the one passing, my advantage is mobility. What is his advantage? More limbs. Harder for me to make use of my feet for the attack, except for by repositioning my body.
Right.
But like as far as intersection, it's like it tends to be pretty much my hands, although I can do other stuff too. But
Mm-hmm.
like I start thinking about it in that way, and then without even studying guard passing, like specific techniques, my ability to pass guard has gone up because I broke it down into what is essentially a guard pass
Right. And then I
from a
think
dip.
it's you start to relate to the reality of it, like what you need to do, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. And
And
then
that's
what I haven't really explored, but what I would really like to think about it, like if is and do this is ways to use following, say, or leading specifically in the context of not jujitsu, no, just in the context of guard passing.
yeah.
You see?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can see possibilities there. Can you
Yeah.
use
I can
joining specifically
just
in the context
start
of
small or something like that. Yeah, just put.
mm-hmm.
Can you put it in there? Can you make it work? Yes. Now this is yes. Fucking love it. As I've had, like, I remember grappling with you one time, rolling, and I was trying joining, and like there was something there. I just didn't map it the fuck out.
It's too big. Grappling is complicated.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's mechanically more complicated than any other
It's
aspect of
like
fighting.
like when you're talking about, it's like a different series of warfares. Like if I get in between somebody's legs, there's only, it's like, okay, we're doing this battle.
Mm-hmm.
And then I move to some other position. It's like, okay, this battle. Or like somebody gets on mount with me and I'm like, oh, I'm in this battle again. I need to get out of here or whatever. And
Yeah.
then, but it's like that specific battle. It's like a
So that's
different
one of the things
warfares.
that I and maybe it's time to go if you only have an hour.
Yeah,
Um,
let me just check in real quick here because I just got a text.
let me pose an idea to you that we're something we could actually investigate in our own training and maybe actually create something new. Okay, what would that be? It would be a real way, a measurable way to actually integrate Chengshin principles into grappling.
Mm.
Okay, in a way that's that's functional and you can demonstrate. Okay. All right. So the way it would work would be something like this. Identify, as you were saying, like the little sub wars of no-gi grappling. We don't have to do this for the first time. Many people have done this in many ways. So there's like, the open guard game, the half guard game. There's many positions, and each position is considered like its own little world, its little
Yeah.
subdomain. Okay, and then we study uh, some of those domains. We don't have to study all of them. And then when I say study, what I mean is look at those domains from the perspective of several different, well-reputed masters in that field, right? So that means like really good guard players if we're studying guard. And look at what they do from a technical perspective, and look at what they do from a strategic perspective, and look at specifically what their objectives are.
Okay.
And then so if you look at objective, that means the result you're looking for. If you look at technical perspective, it means like what are the specific techniques that they do to obtain that. And then strategically, how do they connect to those techniques together and in relationship to what to obtain that objective? And then what we do is study that, maybe from more than one perspective. If they're good, the perspectives should be similar, because we're working with objective reality here. And if you look at the best of the best around a specific objective reality, you're going to find a lot of concurrence.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
this is what happens. And then within that field, we start to look at, okay, this is the techniques they're suggesting. Now, how can I implement this strategy using only complementing? So then I tie my hands behind my back, so to speak. I say, I'm going to implement as much of the strategy as possible using only complementing. And the strategy will probably break down, because at some point the strategy probably doesn't use complementing.
Perhaps, or it just doesn't work for that.
Yeah. So then you have to invent something, or like, how can I achieve the same goal using complementing instead of what they've offered? And then everywhere where you can do complementing already, great, you're doing complementing already. Everywhere where you can't do complementing, where you have to do something else, you have to create a new way to do it that involves complementing. And then you have just created a system that uses nothing but complementing, which is going to mean effortless, which is going to mean body being principles. It's going to mean, altered states of consciousness as necessary, etc. It's going to be Cheng Shin in the context of that game.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying? Sounds like a lot of work, but could be done. And I think if after enough time, you could actually create more than one principle-based strategy for the guard passing domain, or guard retention, or imposing top control, or etc., like leg attacks, like leg locks, and things like that. You could go into specific domains, and you could go into like multiple identifiable domains that are connected together, and you could connect them all together via complementing or joining. Like joining would probably be one of the best ones for grappling, but not the only one. You would need people that would be specifically focused on working certain positions with you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably lots of situational.
Lots of positional sparring.
Yeah.
Right. You would need to have at least one partner who was like dedicated to being your research assistant, and then you would need to take it out from that research assistant place to doing it with other people who are like not aware that they're helping you conduct your research, but that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? You need to study position from you. It'd be stupid, I think, to go at it like as if you were the first one who's ever done it. right?
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like if
Like
you're gonna go climb
use the
Everest, you could do it all by yourself, or you could like at least read a book by someone who's been there before, right? Like, why reinvent the wheel? You are going to reinvent the wheel, but at least understand what the wheel is,
right.
that's been invented. Because probably there's going to be some people who have thought of a lot of helpful shit along the way,
Mm-hmm.
who've pressure tested the hell out of it for a long time against other people who've pressure tested the hell out of it for a long time. And they've probably come up with a lot of really good stuff.
Yeah, there's a body of knowledge worked out about that.
Yeah, which doesn't mean you have to know it all, but you should get some sense of how this thing works. I think it's important to get some sense of how it works before I try to add my own spiel into it.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but that doesn't take. One thing I found about learning other stuff is Fengshin is really hard to learn.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking about it from that perspective. I'm like, oh
Yeah,
fuck, here we go.
yeah, it's
And
it's
you're probably
actually
thinking like, bro, just watch a couple videos. You're gonna get it in like 5 minutes.
well, no, but it's not going to be to the extent that like learning strength-based technique is much easier than learning
Right.
compressive and elastic based technique that demands outreaching and joining.
Right, because it's very mechanical. I just need to take the right shapes, pull the right levers, and push the right buttons,
Yeah,
kind of
and then
thing.
of course when you add the compression and the joining and everything in, it all gets better.
Yeah.
But these things work really well because they don't rely on that stuff, right? So they're really reliable in the
Yeah.
sense that they just mechanically tend to function quite well the way a wrench does,
Yeah.
right? So mechanical advantage leverage. So anyway, I don't think it's going to be that hard to block out the technique and learn the technique fairly rapidly, especially if you get clear on what the objectives are, and then you can start once you've got it down pretty well, then just the parts that feel like, man, this could be like could I do this with less strength or could I do this with no strength? If I was embodying a principle, how would I do that? You just ask yourself the question and then your body will figure shit out.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see what I mean? And if it's a small enough domain, like if it's just
Like guard game or something.
yeah, and not even like guard game, but like one particular guard game,
Sure.
right? Yeah.
I should probably get going.
Yeah,
I
me too.
wanted to invite you. Do you want to be on a call this Friday?
With whom?
Me.